Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We are just going to give people a few minutes to settle in here, and then we will go ahead and get started. Okay, I see numbers starting to climb, so we're going to go and kick things off. So once again, everyone, welcome and thank you for being here today. My name is Stephanie Tang, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator with the Alberta Municipal Health and Safety Association. Joining me is our wonderful Health and Safety Specialist, Ed Morgan, and our amazing feature speaker, Annie Barnwell from EWI Works. Before we get going, I'm just going to review some housekeeping items. So please note that all attendees have been muted, but you are more than welcome to participate using the chat function on the bottom of your screen. Both Ed and I will be moderating and responding to comments. So for any questions, comments, conversations, we encourage everyone to be interactive and have some really crucial discussions throughout this presentation. There will also be a Q&A at the end of the session. So there are two options. You can either submit your questions throughout the presentation and we will have them queued up for Annie, or you can submit them during the Q&A itself. It is completely up to you. Lastly, if you need technical support, if Zoom is being a little cranky, please feel free to reach out in the chat or via email or phone on AMHSA's website, and I will be more than happy to assist with that as well. And next, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. So Annie Barnwell is a senior ergonomist and team lead with EWI Works. She has supported a wide range of sectors, including aerospace, construction, education, emergency services, manufacturing, municipal operations, office environments, oil and gas, retail, utilities, and warehousing. With her experience and expertise, she provides practical, evidence-based guidance tailored to the physical and psychosocial demands of each job. Annie is a Canadian certified professional ergonomist with over 20 years of experience across Canada and the United States. Holding a master's degree in occupational biomechanics from the University of New Brunswick, she is an active advocate for ergonomics through media outreach and ongoing professional contributions. Throughout her career, Annie has completed detailed industrial ergonomics assessments, job demands analysis, office evaluations, ergonomics program development, and return to work planning. She partners closely with employers, workers, and unions to improve injury prevention, workstation and workflow design, furniture selection, and safe reintegration following injury. Her collaborative, job-focused approach helps organizations implement sustainable ergonomic solutions that reduce risk and support healthy, productive workplaces. So with all of that wealth of experience, knowledge, and expertise, we're truly excited to have her here to speak to you today. And without further ado, I will hand things off to Ed Morgan. Please, Ed, take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie, and audience. I know you all here to see Annie, our subject matter expert. But before we pass it over to her, I just wanted to emphasize that at AMHSA, we create these webinars in a way that we want to achieve specific learning objectives. And in support of that, I just wanted to communicate to you guys that we are going to come out with a survey for you to that will be sent to you to comment on how we achieve those objectives, or if there's any places that opportunities for improvement. So the learning objectives for this webinar, I won't go into any will go into that, but basically our focus is on breaking down real drivers of ergonomic injuries and how to equip you or your team of ways to practically address them for both reducing the MSI incidents that occur and or mitigating the impact of those injuries, so costs are under control. So anyway, without further ado, I'll pass it on to Annie.
I am really excited to be here. I have done quite a few different ergonomics coaching sessions for AMHSA, and I'm happy to be back again. So today we are focusing primarily on municipal workers and using ergonomics to reduce injuries in our frontline municipal workers. So they complete many crucial tasks to keep more communities running, from water and wastewater treatment to transportation, maintaining infrastructure and roads, water systems, snow removal. Communities rely on their timely expertise. My role in all of this is to recognize that some tasks completed by workers require forceful exertion, heavy lifting, forceful pushing, pulling, or time spent using awkward postures. And these kind of risk factors put them at risk for developing injuries. So during this talk, we're going to review musculoskeletal injuries, what they are, how they develop. I find when we're better able to understand the development, it allows us to prevent or reduce the occurrence and severity of injuries that our workers experience. We are going to look at some injury and claims statistics from Alberta specifically to remind us why injury prevention is important and find out what the costs of not preventing those injuries are. We're going to look at risk factors and methods to reduce injuries. And we're also going to touch on psychosocial factors because often if people are experiencing musculoskeletal injuries, sometimes we also see some secondary mental health claims. While there are several ways to reduce musculoskeletal injury risk, I want you to be encouraged by training and warming up to work, but also motivated to make some impactful changes that are directly associated with reducing our known risk factors, which we'll go over. I want to empower you to make a business case for improving ergonomics in your workplace, and we'll talk about how to do some of those things. I firmly believe that adopting ergonomics principles into designs and equipment will reduce injury claims and costs, and I know that these improvements also result in reduced absenteeism and turnover rates, as well as productivity and quality improvements. So these 6 ergo principles that I'll talk about at the very end will all tie in, and then we'll finish off with a Q&A. Okay, so I like to start off by talking about what a musculoskeletal injury is. So it's an injury that involves muscles, tendons, nerves, ligaments, joints, and other soft tissues. Many of you have probably had one before in your life. Some of you might have one right now. Sometimes we experience these at work. Sometimes they develop outside of work. Sometimes they develop during our recreation or leisure time. And sometimes we are injured and then we return to work and find that sometimes these injuries, perhaps from a hockey game, perhaps from a motor vehicle collision, they're influencing how we're able to perform our work. Regardless of where this injury happened, it's important that you work with your employers to mitigate the severity of the injury symptoms when you are okay. Ergonomics is the scientific discipline that looks at interactions between the worker and their system. So as an ergonomist, I'm always looking at the user and tools that they touch and the equipment that they work with and their entire work system. I always want to match the job to fit the worker and the product to the user. We know that when we do this, we can reduce the occurrence and severity of musculoskeletal injuries. So these are some tables that were provided to us by WCB, and this data looks specifically at Alberta Municipal Frontline workers. These graphs are looking at injuries over the last 5 years. You'll notice that the numbers are fairly static across the board. Ed will go into these in further detail, but I just want to let you know that these frontline workers that are used in these particular graphs, we're looking at public works and maintenance laborers, equipment operators and related workers, heavy equipment operators, water and wastewater treatment plant operators, utility maintenance workers. These tables specifically don't look at recreation or policing and things like that, but we know that those exist. So Ed, can you take these?
Yeah, so in AMHSA's efforts to make this really relatable to our audience in municipalities, we requested like 5-year averages from the Alberta government on our industry codes or breakdown villages, towns, municipality, districts, and cities. so you can relate. And what was really interesting that we found in this slide and in the slide next is, just like Annie said, it's been relatively static across the 5 years. So, however, even though it's static, the number of injuries, it impacts, depending on the size of the municipality, differently. So in villages and towns, MSIs actually make up a significant chunk, sometimes more than half of what their entire lost time MSI, I mean, their entire lost time claims, and MSI makes a huge chunk of that. And so focus on that is really important for those territories, I mean, those municipality sectors. However, with cities and large municipal districts, it makes a lower percentage of their overall lost time claims. However, when they do have an MSI, it it's a huge cost per claim in comparison to other claims, and it's still a very significant item. But so it affects both types of large and small, but just a little bit differently. And if we go to the next slide, I can dive a little bit deeper in there. If we can click to the next slide, or if there's a, is there a
The lost time claim.
where it talks about oh, there it is. Sorry. I'm looking at two different things. So in this slide here, it's the has the total lost time claims of both municipalities and cities, just like the previous one, but it also shows the averages of the costs of them. So in here in villages, because they're so small compared to municipal districts and some of our towns, you don't see their bars in 2024, 2025. It's still significant for them. And for the cities, you'll see here their total claim costs, even though they make up less, are like we're talking a lot, like as you see there. However, it is slightly going down. So I wonder things like this that Annie is doing, and the push to improve um, physical demands analysis and back to work programs and focus on that. We're having some improvement, but there's so much more that we can do. I'll pass it to you
Yeah,
now.
no, I totally agree, Ed. I think that the reductions that we're seeing in cost over the years are probably due to some interventions that we're doing, probably some training, some good training. Also, the availability of modified work and improved claims management. I think that's been a big focus on lots of different places. If we're able to keep people at work in modified roles, then that is going to reduce a lot of the costs that we see. One thing that I spend a lot of time doing, all of my time, let's say all of my time doing, is looking for risk factors. These are the most common risk factors that I'm always seeking to identify, no matter what type of workplace I'm in. I'm always looking at forceful demands. So that includes things like lifting. It includes arm work. So forceful pushing or pulling. Includes carrying. It also includes hand forces, like gripping demands. I spend a ton of time looking at awkward postures. So if people are, using positioning their bodies away from their midline, really. So neck twisting, reaching over their shoulder, reaching away from their shoulder. Anytime the elbows are away from the midline, or anytime the body is twisting away from the hip. I look at what the lower body is doing. Is there squatting involved? Is there kneeling involved? Is there bending involved? More importantly, to the awkward posture, I always ask why. Why are they bending? Why are they twisting? Be pretty smart. Nobody usually chooses to work in an awkward posture, so it's always for a reason. So part of my job is to find out the why. When I'm looking for the whys, that also gives me an idea of how frequently somebody is exerting a force, or how long they're adopting an awkward posture. What's that duration look like? I look at things like contact stress, because I know that people don't like contact stress. They don't like something pressing against their muscle or their body. because it's going to leave a bruise. If they are trying to avoid the bruise, often they will get into an awkward posture. So sometimes when I'm looking at the why for an awkward posture, the answer is because they're trying to avoid some contact stress. Maybe somebody is squatting or bending their back because they don't want to kneel on a hard surface. So maybe we can provide some knee pads or a kneeling pad or raise the work so that we're kind of avoiding that. I look at vibration and why, jarring. Some of those things we can't change, but if we acknowledge that they exist, sometimes we can change some things that happen around them. I look at temperature. So if people are doing work in cold environments, their muscles are going to be colder. Cold muscles, cold ligaments, that means they're not as elastic and they don't respond to force or effort as well as a warm muscle does. Too much warmth is not great though. So I pay attention to warm, humid environments and take particular precautions with workers if they're working in a heat stress environment to protect them from heat stress related illnesses. I also look at personal risk factors. These are things I can't change as much or at all, but I like to acknowledge that they exist. And sometimes we can work around those as well. And sometimes it encourages us to make better choices when we know that there are personal risk factors. Being tall, being short. If somebody is pregnant, they won't be able to reach as far. If somebody has injured their back once before, we know that the ligaments are stressed and they are more apt to be re-injured. So we look at these personal risk factors, we take them into consideration. As well as these physical risk factors that I spend a lot of time looking, we know as safety professionals that musculoskeletal injuries frequently lead to secondary mental health claims due to chronic pain, depression, other factors. So I do like to kind of take a look at psychosocial factors in the workplace because they can impact employees' response to work and the work environment. This can result in negative mental health outcomes, and it can also increase the risk or the length of duration of their musculoskeletal injury. Psychosocial factors, depending on what they are, they can create stress responses, which can affect the length of time that somebody is recovering from an injury. For example, if we have employees not taking their breaks, or if they're working overtime to keep up with a demand or perceived demand, this can increase the exposure time to particular hazards that we maybe thought that we were mitigating due to the length of time that the workers were exposed to it. When people are exposed to awkward postures for a prolonged period of time, it can increase muscle tension, can also increase blood pressure and stress. And these are particularly hazardous if a task already requires awkward postures or forceful exertion. I try to work with employers to make sure that we're building in recovery time and rest time. When an ergonomist is talking about rest and breaks, we don't mean that we want people to be sleeping on the job, of course. We are looking at postural breaks and changes. So maybe instead of using the hands very intensively, we're doing something to give the hand a break and we're using other parts of the body, hopefully larger muscles. When we focus on improving psychosocial factors in the workplace, we also notice a positive impact towards physical and mental health. People are more satisfied with their jobs, they perform better, and they're more productive. So how do we find all of these risk factors anyway? Facility walkthroughs and site visits are my top ways of finding out these things. I can notice awkward postures. I can notice forceful demands. I often will ask employees to share photos or videos of experiences that maybe I haven't been able to see. Other popular ways of learning about these are from employee reports. So it might be Joint Health and Safety Committee minutes. It might be employee surveys. Maybe you're reviewing field level hazard assessments that have been completed by employees. Maybe you're reviewing injury reports from individuals. Statistics from provincial organizations like WCB Alberta can give you some really good information on what's happening in your particular sector, or if you don't know about it, you can look federally. We'll provide some resources at the very end so that you can look and search for some stats, because if maybe you are experiencing few injuries or a lot of injuries, and it's nice to be able to partner with sister organizations to find out some things that they're doing to reduce injuries, or to have a heads up so that you know what might be coming if you don't take some action. Looking at job-specific reports like job demand assessments, physical demand assessments, job hazard assessments. Those will give you some high-level areas where you might want to focus your attention. Informal meetings with employees or supervisors. There's a ton of ergonomic screening tools available if you want to take things to the next level. Another place you might be seeing them is in orders from OHS, non-compliance reports, or musculoskeletal injury risk, that type of thing. So you might have all of these resources available to you, and you just might not know how to sort through all of it. I'm going to use just a quick little example here because I want to show some things that I look at when I'm looking at jobs, and I'm trying to decide where I should spend my attention first. So this is just a sample job demand assessment. I cut out a couple of things like the job description because, after I read the job description, I kind of want to know, where do I look next? So I want to know how frequently certain tasks are completed so that I can prioritize interventions or prioritize my attention. This also allows you to focus on a particular area of concern if somebody has reported to you a concern. Many job demand assessments will also indicate a physical handling level or a material or manual handling level for quick reference. You can see on this example here, we've got, heavy in a few different areas. We've got limited in a few different areas. Those are words that mean something, okay? So these descriptions and ratings are used by WCB Alberta, and they come from the Canadian National Occupational Classification Guide. So when we're talking about a job having light physical demands, we mean that the employees are exerting up to 10 kilograms of force. If we're talking about a heavy job, it means that they are exerting more than 20 kilograms of force. I know that some places don't consider 44 pounds or 20 kilograms to be heavy, but that is how the classification guideline is set up. Consider them to be heavy. I like things to be really objective. And this is a way of being objective and acknowledging that something that weighs 44 pounds or more, or if you have to exert that force, is heavy. Sometimes it can't be avoided, and that's important to recognize as well. But it's good to have a starting point. Sorry. So when we know that things weigh more than 44 pounds or are handled or exerted with more than 44 pounds of force, what we can do is we can look for opportunities to optimize other risk factors. So if we can't do anything to manipulate the force demands, that means that we need to work really hard to make sure that we're optimizing posture or we're reducing the frequency that this force is handled or exerted. And it just allows us to focus our attention a little bit better. One thing I wanted to bring up is that these classifications are different from the ACJ definitions of heavy or light work, which is based on energy expenditure and heat stress perspective and things like that, which you may also be getting ready to ramp up for with the summer. So when we continue to look through these job demand assessments or field level hazard assessments, we're looking for these different values, maybe part weights or forces exerted, so that we know where we can make some changes. Sometimes these types of documents can also help us if we are doing an injury investigation or if we're managing claims. If somebody has some restrictions and they need some modified work, looking at something like a job demand assessment will allow the claims manager to be able to say, you know what, we need to reduce their exposure to these types of forces. And that helps a lot with claims management. So I always recommend when we start off at work, we do something to get our bodies ready for work. So we do dynamic warm-ups in a few of the places that I work at. And if your frontline workers don't have something like this already, please contact myself or somebody else from AMHSA to help you get started. We have free resources. We have a dynamic warm-up program. This is an excerpt from our poster. Tons of free resources that we'll share at the very end. Talk about how to use this. And the only cost, if you choose, is to buy posters. And that is the cost of a poster. So all of the other information you can find freely available. I really encourage dynamic warm-ups or something like this because what happens when we properly warm up? We reduce the risk of injury by increasing blood flow. It also improves joint range of motion and warming up the muscles. Okay. Some other side effects are invigorating your mind and your body and promoting a positive team culture. If everybody is doing a warm-up together, everybody knows what everybody's limitations and capabilities are. A warm-up engages multiple muscle groups, and it's a really great baseline activity for workers of all types, all sectors, including your office workers. Okay. Other ways of reducing musculoskeletal injury risk is training. So baseline training is very important. I think we're doing a pretty good job of providing some training to employees and supervisors. It's important for employees to participate and to recognize and report hazards to their supervisors and discomfort and concerns. I know that we can improve training, especially in areas of how to use our existing equipment and how to use existing adjustability features, and probably in training in job coaching, having senior employees work with junior employees to show them how to do jobs properly. I think where we can make a bigger impact with training is if we spend some time with decision makers and those who are responsible for purchasing equipment and tools. I'm going to kind of call all of this procurement training. So I think it's really important when we are recognizing the tools and equipment that we have, determining what is working well so that with new products, we keep those things and find out what can be improved so that we can make things better for the next product that comes out there. I think it's really important to collect feedback from the people who were going to be using the product before officially making changes. Another thing that's really good to do is once you start learning information, make some equipment standards. So, for example, if your municipality or whatever program, department area that you were looking at specifically, if you're using a lot of vehicles and carpool vehicles, shared vehicles, you really want to make sure that the driver's seats are adjustable. And I don't just mean from forward and back to account for leg length. I want to see some height and depth adjustable lumbar support, for example, so that the lumbar support that is in the seat will be able to fit the person who's using it. I work in a lot of different areas where there's people who are 5 feet tall working in the same vehicles as people who are 6'10". So being able to adjust the depth to the lumbar support is nice, but if it doesn't go high enough, it's not going to be very effective. So if you can put some limits and requests into equipment standards in the first, that can help you get to the next level. Another thing that I see frequently is, really small people, really tall people using the same great big truck. So sometimes just having a standard that says, if we're using, we want to make sure that we've got running boards so that our people who are 5 feet tall aren't doing a 24-inch step into the vehicle. Okay, so just to kind of give some examples and pick on vehicles a little bit here. We know that training and behavioral-based training works best when employees have control over their tasks. So I want you to be asking yourself, how much job control do our employees really have? And if they have quite a bit of job control, then the behavioral-based training will work really well. If they have less job control, I think it's really important to know that, because then that means that our behavioral-based training is only going to go so far. And we need to optimize our tools and equipment to be able to give employees the best chance at reducing their injury risk. Can they prepare for physical demanding tasks in advance? Do they have the equipment that they need with them? We need to make sure that we're making really good decisions about the equipment. So with my vehicle example from before, if they can't adjust that lumbar support in the chair, that's fine. If we know that, we can make sure that we've got lumbar support pillows available so that the employees can make sure that they're still having their back supported. We want to make sure that equipment is readily and easily available to eliminate forceful load handling and awkward postures. I always go back to one example of a workplace that had some cranes available so that people were able to move things around, and they didn't have to lift loads as often as they normally would. But one of their lift assists was constantly occupied, which meant that they weren't able to use it for some of these other jobs. So if a lift assist is available and you're counting on it to be able to do all of these things, it's important that it is actually available. Do your employees have the ability to intersperse heavy tasks throughout the day, or do they all happen in the first 15 minutes of the shift? If that's how it is, then it's good to know that so that we can provide the right equipment to be able to do all of these heavy tasks safely in 15 minutes, instead of thinking that they might be able to split them over an 8-hour day and have some time to recover in between tasks. If we're expecting people to be able to split a heavy task with another person, is there another person available to help with that? Or if we're asking for a 2-person lift, is there space for a 2-person task to take place? So is it happening in a stairwell? Is it happening around equipment? Being able to look at the whys and to determine if something is actually safe to do needs to be taken into consideration when we're asking people not to bend their backs or not to twist their spine. I always go into tools and equipment. So I think that the best way of reducing injury is providing the best possible tools and equipment for the individuals who are going to be using it. I like to look at barriers for their use. If there's something that has been provided but it's not being used, I like to find out why. Sometimes it's because people don't know that it exists. Sometimes it's because they don't know how to use it. And sometimes it's because it's not really located in the place that they need it when they need it. So fine-tuning all of those different examples, fine-tuning equipment recommendations is really important. It's important to test equipment, conduct equipment trials with the people who are going to be using the equipment, to make sure that you're not doing things like buying lots of different pieces of equipment to see if it works and then finding out it doesn't work. Usually this is where I hear of ergonomics cost me so much money. And I think it only costs money if you buy the wrong thing first and then you buy the right thing. And that's going to cost you a little bit of money. But if you have some conversations with the users and run equipment trials to make sure that you're choosing the right equipment, it can definitely save you some money in the long run. So we're all familiar with the hierarchy of control. I want you to look now at this other table. So this is a study by Goggins and colleagues that looked specifically at the effectiveness of various ergonomics interventions, administrative, PPE, engineering, all of those things. So they looked at more than 250 ergonomic studies. They reported the benefits of ergonomics programs and control measures were reviewed. Okay. Sorry about that. Their results showed that engineering solutions result in fewer MSIs, fewer lost time days, and reduced workers' compensation costs. They also noted many benefits related to productivity, product quality, reduced employee turnover, and absenteeism. So this was a really big study in the ergonomics world. This is from 2008, and I frequently go back to this graphic because I think it's important to remember that training is a baseline and training is so important. But we can only go so far with telling people not to bend their back and not to twist their back. If we are constantly telling them to adopt strong posture, but then providing them with work that is maybe floor level, we're not really helping them help themselves. One of the biggest benefits from this particular study is that it went on and it has helped develop quite a few different models to assist companies with cost-justifying solutions to reduce musculoskeletal injuries. Okay, and so I'm going to touch on this very briefly because I want you to know that there are these tools that exist to help you justify costs. So that instead of spending your money on claims, maybe you're investing some of that money into some of the tools and equipment that will reduce your claims, next year or a couple of years from now. Okay, so this Ergo return on investment calculator can be found at msdprevention.com, Ergo ROI calculator, and this resource will also be provided later. But so I've taken some screenshots from the website here. I want you to see that it allows you to compare a few different interventions. It allows you to input information from your specific job, and it allows you to look at different interventions. Okay, you can put your information for your solution. You can put your cost of your intervention that you want to test, purchase costs, engineering costs, training costs, put all these costs together, and you can compare your back injury prevention training with a lift table, for example, or another intervention. One thing that's really lovely about this particular tool, actually two things. One, it's Canadian. The other thing that's really helpful with this is that it also looks at the effectiveness of the solution and gives you points for it. So if you are eliminating the exposure to the hazard, so if you're putting in a mechanical device that will lift and move the load for the person, you're eliminating the exposure and you'll get kind of more points. It's a bigger bang for your buck. If you're reducing the level of exposure, maybe you're providing a lift table, so you still have to lift a heavy load, but maybe the user is able to adopt a neutral posture and they don't have to bend. So it looks at the effectiveness of the solution. It also looks at the productivity improvements that you might think that you are going to encounter. So you might be speeding something up. You might be not expecting any productivity at all. And it will also guide you toward some different
Annie,
solutions there.
make a
Ed, you wanted to
comment
add
here?
something?
Yeah. So Annie gave me a little heads up that she's gonna look at this calculator here, and she said it was Canadian. Sure enough, it's basically out of Ontario, and here in Alberta, we like to think that we're independent. We can come up with our own, but when there's a good tool, there's a good tool. And this is for our health and safety advisors or coordinators out there. It's actually essentially a calculator that plays on the cost of incident investigations, but makes it focused on MSI. So the actual first incident investigation calculators actually came out from the West, from WorkSafe BC, and then the following year by WorkSafe Alberta. And basically, it looks at the iceberg effect, where we only see the direct cost, i.e., the claim cost of ergonomic or MSI related injury, but we don't look at the hidden cost underneath the water, where the iceberg is 3 or 4 or 5 or many times bigger than what we see. So this is a when Annie introduced this to me, I was excited. I thought it was a great tool because it's a good way to communicate to your leadership why they should invest in ergonomics and human factor preventive measures, and that the cost that you think is expensive to bring in equipment like lifting aids or whatever are are not a huge cost in the big scheme of things, if you consider those indirect under the water iceberg costs. So sorry, Annie, I just wanted to jump in there because I thought it's a great tool to use.
Compliment. Have a picture. So the next thing I want to go into is some of these key ergo principles that I always come back to when I'm doing training. And so these are pretty general, but I want to show you how they can be applied and how you can apply them to different equipment, and how when you're thinking about it, sometimes you do need to think outside the box a little bit to find out if there's a tool or equipment that will help the employee get to this state. It's not just telling them to work in the green zone. So these principles should be practiced. They should be strived towards. We encourage people to kind of keep things off the floor. Work in the green zone, as you can kind of see it here. So ideally, we want people working below their chest and above their knees or above their knuckle height. When we have employees of different stature, think of somebody who's 5 feet tall and somebody who's 6'10". Their green zone for each of them is going to be a little bit different. So by keeping it off the floor, this is one way of making sure that we provide adjustability in our equipment, no matter what they're using. We want people to keep their hands below their shoulder as much as possible. So sometimes this means we're standing on a raised surface or a platform or doing something else to keep the elbows close to the body. Tools with extensions can help a ton. Sometimes we have to be careful with longer tools, not providing the force demands that we might need. So there is a bit of a balance. Sometimes we can use clamps to hold objects in place to allow you to free up both of your hands. I encourage people to try to optimize these working heights whenever they can. One example that I did recently was with a group. So these pictures, just for reference, the next few pictures, they are all kind of taken from the internet, public domain, and I've screenshotted them so that I can show the specific things that I want you to look at, because I don't use pictures with that I've taken with my clients. So this example here is looking at using a water valve key. So we want to optimize working height. So depending on where our people are working and how far down the valve is, like if these would kind of at the frost line or below the frost line, you might need that key to be long so that it can get to the valve, but also to allow the employee to work at their waist height. There are different valve key lengths available, and some of them are adjustable. So keep an eye out when you are looking for different products. Another key ergo principle is to keep things close. I ask people to think about their elbows. And right now, as you are listening, I want you to sit or stand, whatever you're doing. And I want you to have your elbows really close to your body. When you've got your elbows really close to your body, I want you to kind of move them in and out. This is your personal primary reach zone. In that image, it's the green. We want people working with their elbows close to their bodies as often as possible. Okay. Things that you are doing a little bit less often, it's okay if you bring your arms out so you've got a bit of an awkward shoulder posture, but you'll note I still have a neutral back posture when I'm adopting an awkward shoulder posture. The red zone means awkward shoulder postures and awkward back postures, okay? So we want to keep commonly used or items close to us. We want them directly in front of us. We want to reduce twisting. We want them as close as we can, okay? Once again, if we have control, I want you to be able to take that control. If we don't have control, it's less easy for employees to be able to do this. We want people to be able to look straight ahead. We want to reduce awkward neck twisting and awkward back twisting. We want to position objects that require looking. We want to keep them below eye level so that people can adopt a neutral neck posture and that they can use their eyes to look and glance. We want to keep work pretty close. One example that I frequently go into, and municipalities and other workplaces, I see people conducting work on a laptop or tablets in their vehicles. This work has kind of traditionally been an afterthought in the vehicles, but I'm seeing it a lot more often. So we really need to make sure that procurement or whoever's in charge of purchasing vehicles, make sure that if laptop or tablet use is required, that we're keeping that in perspective with the design of the job. Employees look at tablets for lots of different reasons: navigation, utility locate, email communications, database searches. Sometimes they're just looking, and sometimes they are touching. When we go back to what ergonomics is, I look at the interaction. So if I've got somebody who's spending a lot of time looking at the screen, I want that screen to be close to eye level, near that height, also kind of reducing the midline twist. If they're also touching the screen or touching a keyboard, I want that to be close to them. I want that to be in their primary reach zone. So I guess what I'm saying is not all laptop mounts are created equal. So make sure that if you are in charge of purchasing a laptop mount for your vehicle, make sure it's going to be the right one for the job. And if somebody has to touch the screen or touch the keyboard, make sure that they're able to adjust it to pull it close so that they're not reaching and twisting. So there's tons of different ones on the market. The image that I have here, it was just the best image, and I have seen this product in use. It's a good product. You want to make sure, but it depends what you're using it for. So make sure that when you are looking for a certain quality in a product, you're getting it so that you don't end up purchasing something that's maybe not doing what you thought, or purchasing something that's maybe going to introduce a new risk factor. I also want to make sure that if you're using tools, you can have a good grip. I want people working in strong postures, and I want people to be able to use tools that fit their hands, and make sure that you're doing good maintenance on the tools. Make sure that there's no rips, there's tears, there's sharp objects. Keep an eye on that vibration. Keep an eye on the kickback. If something needs to be replaced, do it. Another project I was involved in recently, which could apply to some of the jobs in roads and recreation parks, some of the other areas that are using a lot of hoses, is to minimize the gripping demands. Look at different types of nozzles. For one job, we were able to introduce bow valves to be able to turn on, and then they just had to turn on the water, and now they're spraying. They don't need to be gripping as much. So this was just something that we did recently at another location. So just kind of look for those risk factors and try to identify. If once you identify those risk factors that you're trying to eliminate, you can find products that will help you achieve those goals. Change it up is the last ergo principle. This is more so for supervisors and managers to just kind of be aware of, that it's really important when we have employees in jobs where they don't have as much control, that if we are responsible for taking on that control for them, we do it in a mindful way. We help organize their day, or we help organize a job rotation to spread out, physical or repetitive demands or mentally taxing demands throughout the day, so that they're not on somebody all of the time. We've got several resources. I sped through this because there's a lot of information I wanted to cover. We have a lot of resources for you all to be able to incorporate some of these in your workplace. So AMHSA specifically has several. I was involved with the MSI prevention campaign that we launched. It was in 2018 or 2019. There's a lot available there, including information on the dynamic warm-up guide. We have the cognitive job demands analysis microsite. We have links to our YouTube page with ergonomic coaching, where I've done previous, and my colleagues have done previous presentations. They're all on YouTube and available to see. WCB Alberta has provided us with some resources for this specific presentation, but if you are looking for your own sector specific injury data, this is where you go to find it. WCB Alberta also provides tons of resources. And if you are having trouble navigating those, these are your municipal industry support specialists. They can help guide you through to find exactly what you're looking for. The government of Alberta has lots of musculoskeletal disorders resources, and the return on investment calculator that I referred to, that's from the program in Ontario, and you can look at that. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, feedback, I would love to hear it directly, or please give it to AMHSA specifically. Ed mentioned earlier that there's going to be a questionnaire. I would love to open this up some Q&A right now. Thank you so much for attending.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Annie. And just a reminder to everyone that has questions, please put them in the chat. We'll give everyone a few minutes to do so.
In the meantime, there is not a question, but just a statement I made sure to put in the chat when it came up. But he had a slide on the physical demand level, otherwise known as the NOC guide. And it may be because of so back in the day, I used to, be a health and safety manager or manage the health and safety management system. We had to come up with, work with someone like yourself, Annie, to develop physical demands analysis, or PDAs, and also define the minimum requirements for jobs that had high exertion, or fit for duty, fit for work kind of stuff, and the limit for heavy work. And it may be because a lot of times I work for multinationals, and they had American influence as well. They use 50 pounds as the standard. So I'm wondering if I didn't remember. I see it here now. It has 20 kg. So is it just a metric versus imperial difference between those 6 pounds, or is there any other? Can you kind of comment on that, or is there any science behind that we don't know about?
Totally. Oh my gosh. It's fine. So I'll try to keep it brief. 50 pounds, 20 is very similar to 23 kilograms. So the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in the United States, they have the NIOSH equation, the NIOSH lifting equation, has one of the elements in that equation is a load constant. So the load constant of 23 kilograms roughly 50 pounds, is where they start with in determining if something's going to be a safe lift or not. So essentially, theoretically, if you're not moving a load through a very far distance, if you've got a really close horizontal distance, if you're able to keep those elbows close, if there's no twisting required in the lift, if you've got really great handles, if you are passing all of the other variables that are part of this lifting equation, it's saying 23 kilograms is fine. And so many employers think that they are doing a really good job with everything that they're doing. So 23 kilograms is a really great place to start. But as an ergonomist, when somebody's asking me about a safe lift, I'm asking lots of questions. I'm asking what the working heights are. Where are they starting? Where are they ending? Are they able to stand really close? So I'm looking at all of those different variables. So I know that, if you're looking at the NIOSH equation, you might see 50 pounds reference. And so, yes, if lots of other elements of the lift are safe, getting closer to 50 pounds is probably fine, but I consider it a starting point. Is that helpful?
No, that's awesome. You're about precision and using recognized references. So I respect that. And no, it's just I just found it curious, right? Because like for a lot of fit for duty type requirements, you'll have them, can you lift 50 pounds? And can you climb ladders and all that kind of stuff at certain heights. So anyway, that's very good. And I didn't well, I haven't done it recently, but I didn't know about this guidance, so it's good to know that it's available. And because if it legitimizes when you say something, you can point to a good reference, so that's good.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat. Annie did such a phenomenal job. Everyone is super educated now, so that's awesome to see. We're going to go ahead and wrap up then and let everyone get back to their day. But just for closing remarks, Annie, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. Thank you to all of our attendees for doing the same. And I just wanted to remind everyone to please take a few minutes after this webinar ends to fill out the survey. That really helps us out to make these learning events useful for you and really nail down on what's helpful for your municipalities. And other than that, we will see you all next time.